Hello everyone and welcome back to Player One Start. In this video, I'm going to take a look at the games that caught my attention in 2021 on the PlayStation 5. This is part 3 of a series that I've been doing called My Year in Gaming 2021. The PlayStation 5 was the first of the two latest game systems to hit the market to enter my collection, and that was thanks to a fan of the channel I met at a video game convention that was in my area. Since that time, my collection on the PlayStation 5 has actually exploded with physical media, which is not what I was expecting. I thought it'd take a while for me to get this many games for the system, but it turns out that a lot of retro game stores in my area have been discounting these items very heavily consistently throughout the year, but a lot of these just enter my collection in on Black Friday. I've always been somewhat of a bargain hunter when it comes to video games, and it's pretty rare when I actually spend a full $60 for a game title. Now that this generation is bumping that price up to $70 for new games, again, that was something I thought would hinder my collecting. A lot of the gaming deals I got prior to Black Friday were actually in physical stores. That again is a bit surprising to me, but maybe that's what these major retailers are doing to get foot traffic into their stores at a time where a lot of people are still social distancing and taking preventative measures during this pandemic. Also, another tip that helped me get this collection was going for as many used games as I possibly could. GameStop has offered a lot of deals on these used titles for next-gen consoles since day one of me collecting for this system. But when we're looking at which of these games have taken up most of my time this year, let's go ahead and start with Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Being a first-party console exclusive, at least as of the making of this video, Sackboy: A Big Adventure is one of the best games I have played on this system. If you like games such as Super Mario 3D World, this game plays in virtually the same style. The only thing missing is that instead of Mario, you have Sackboy, and you're allowed to customize your character a bit more than you would be able to in the Mario game. You make your way through each level collecting as many of the orbs as you can so you can unlock access to other areas, and at the end of each stage you face off against a boss. And just like with the Mario 3D World game, you can also play this game in co-op multiplayer. Instead of offering full 3D movement, you do have that 2.5D perspective where the camera is fixed and moves accordingly, moving in and out as you enter different areas to allow you to view the entire playfield. I really enjoyed being able to customize my character to my liking, as I find the generic look of Sackboy to be less appealing. I also really enjoyed the levels that are themed around popular songs of the 70s until now. Overall, it creates that platforming, wholesome family fun atmosphere that Nintendo is famous for, finally on the PlayStation console. You don't need to wait to get a PS5 to get this game, as it's also available on the PlayStation 4, but I personally decided to wait so I would have a brand new game experience on the PlayStation 5, and it was definitely well worth the wait. I would recommend this game to people who are fans of those Mario-style 3D platformers, as well as people who have kids, as I feel this game offers one of those rare opportunities where parents and kids can play the same game and both have an enjoyable time. Another game that was one of the first that I got for this system was Tony Hawk 1 and 2 Remastered. I was looking forward to this game ever since I heard it was announced. Tony Hawk 1 and 2 were very iconic titles on the PlayStation. Even though it was released on virtually every other platform at the time, I always had a special place in my heart for the original PlayStation duo. I was a little disappointed this game did not include my favorite in the series, which is Tony Hawk 3, but Tony Hawk 1 and 2 will keep you busy just as much as they did back in the day. In terms of remasters, I think this is one of the few games I've seen where they got the atmosphere, gameplay, and controls all perfect. This game plays exactly as I remember, but it also still offers me a challenge that I really wasn't expecting. I can go through and beat the first two Tony Hawks on the original PlayStation with little to no issue, but for some reason this game offered me a bit more of a challenge where I really had to work to get that victory in this game. It really offered me a brand new gameplay experience even though I had already played all of these levels. And in terms of environments, I think they nailed each environment very well, making it look better where needed while not going too far to stray from the original source material. I've also played this game on the Nintendo Switch, and due to the compromises they had to make it run on that hardware, I do believe the superior version is on the PlayStation 5. But I say that without having played the Xbox version or the version for Microsoft Windows. It doesn't matter if you're a newcomer or a longtime fan of the series, I think this game is a can't miss. In 2013, the same month that I got my PlayStation 4, I also purchased Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus on the PlayStation 3. Lack of backwards compatibility was one of the reasons why I kept my PlayStation 3 hooked up next to my PlayStation 4 for many years after it was released. And since beating that game, I have been waiting in much anticipation for the next entry. Sadly, the version in 2016 decided to reboot the series rather than continue the story they were working on in Into the Nexus. And while I think that game is a decent adaptation of the original game, I really wasn't that interested in the story as I already knew what was going to happen story-wise. And thankfully when they announced that Rift Apart would be a sequel to Into the Nexus and not a sequel to the reboot in 2016, I was all for it. But can this game live up to 8 years of hype and anticipation from its fanbase? Well, I think it did. To start off with, the art direction in this game is fantastic and it really makes the visuals pop out on this system. The story didn't disappoint either. It really feels like they were very faithful and wanted to give longtime fans an adventure worth the wait and worth the money. Obviously, the gameplay mechanic of being able to warp between different dimensions in mid-game, swapping out all of the game's assets thanks to the super fast SSD, takes center stage in parts of the game, but for the most part I found it not to be really that big of a deal when you actually play the game. For the most part, it's actually used for you to access side quest areas that you can complete to upgrade items and armor. Overall, I think the key element that draws me into Ratchet & Clank is the fact that its gameplay is very well done. Insomniac has pretty much perfected the controls for a third-person shooter. But also the subject matter, the fact that the source material doesn't take itself too seriously and constantly pokes fun at itself, and the unique weapon designs, characters, and enemies that you complete through the whole way will keep you engaged throughout the entire adventure. This game is yet another can't miss on this platform in my opinion, especially if you're a longtime fan of Ratchet & Clank, and if you're a newcomer, there's not really much I think that you'll miss out on if you decide to play this game first. And if you're more curious about these characters and environments that were set up, you can go back and play the 2016 reboots, but sadly the majority of Ratchet & Clank adventures cannot be played on this system natively. You would have to pick up a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 2 to have that experience. Assassin's Creed Valhalla entered my collection simply because it was discounted on a pre-owned retro game store. The last Assassin's Creed game that I played was Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag on the PlayStation 4. I got it when that system launched. But I haven't really been a huge fan of this series since, only casually jumping in to play it every once in a while just to see if it has grown on me at all. I do like games that take place in period-accurate times and locations of the past, and I did find the premise of playing a Viking raider a bit intriguing. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is an open-world action-adventure game structured around several main story arcs and numerous optional side missions called world events. You do take on the role of a Viking raider as they lead fellow Vikings against the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. And if I were to sum up my opinion of this game in 2 words, I would say, not bad. This game actually plays more like an open-world RPG than I think its predecessors did, but maybe I'm just not remembering those as clearly because it's been so long since I played them. I have seen reviews of this game talk about how buggy it was, but that really wasn't my experience. Perhaps since it's been about a year since this game was released, it seems maybe they've finally nailed out most of those bugs. I think people who would enjoy this game the most would be longtime fans of the Assassin's Creed series, or if you're just a fan in general of open-world RPGs set in historical settings, and if the Viking era is of particular interest to you. This is not a PlayStation 5 exclusive, but I am only referring to my experience with the PlayStation 5 version. I don't think this is a game that you can casually pop in and out of, as I played through it over a couple of weekends, dumping around 30 to 40 hours into it, but since I haven't really been back to.
Watch for fates. Sly fox this way.
Another game that I think Insomniac Studios knocked out of the park was Spider-Man Miles Morales. I remember when I saw either the E3 preview or something shortly after that showed that this game would be released for the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. I remember being very grateful, as I knew it would be tough getting a PlayStation 5 at the very beginning, but this is again another game I did not get until I got a PlayStation 5. I enjoyed the story, and I also enjoyed the gameplay in this game, and I don't really want to spoil too much for you other than that, especially because the story I think is half of the enjoyment of this game. The core gameplay of Miles Morales is about the same as its predecessor. It features the same open world, a fictionalized version of modern-day Manhattan, which is now covered in snow because the game is set during the holidays, which I guess seemed kind of weird when I was playing this game in July, and the basic controls remain the same between Peter Parker and Miles Morales. However, there are new abilities that can be unlocked as the storyline progresses. I think that action-adventure games in general are of the more accessible titles to a wider gaming audience, so I would definitely recommend this game to anyone who has a PlayStation 5, but I think it will be especially enjoyed by people who played the first Spider-Man game and are fans of Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe to begin with. Overall, another game that I would consider a can't miss on the PlayStation 5, but you can also play it on the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, Yankee's right. Venom's a good name.
Watch out! He can break on tech with his electric hand!
He can break the weapons, then they come back.
Resident Evil Village is another game that's not one of the usual games that I play on a system, but I decided to grab it because of how many people told me this game was one of the best in the series. Just to give you my perspective going into it, the last Resident Evil game I played was the original on the PlayStation 1. I did enjoy that game as kind of a stealth action horror survival game, but a few years later when I played Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, I was immediately turned away because I wasn't comfortable with that game's controls. And I really haven't been back to the franchise since. And when trying to describe this game, I kept getting flashbacks to Resident Evil 4. Like in that previous game, you can make some makeshift barriers that can be used to fend off enemies. You have an inventory mechanic that is also similar to that of Resident Evil 4. And overall, I found this game to play more like an action-adventure game than I did a survival horror game. The game takes place in an explorable East European village, which to me actually looks like more of a historical setting than it does anything modern. And I think that style is supposed to increase the tension and the horror factor while you play through the game. And other than the horror factor, I really found that this played more like an open-world adventure game, even though you're confined into just this village. You're pretty much given free rein to go around and explore, as long as you don't get into too much trouble trying to fight off enemies you can't beat yet. But something I noticed throughout my playthrough of this game is I wasn't really given too many opportunities to fail or die at this game. I'm not one to start out a game on maximum difficulty to begin with, but I did think that this game played a bit easier than I was expecting. And I really found that strange for a horror game because I never really felt a sense of danger. Like, I knew when I went into an area I would be able to beat it, and there wasn't really any instances where I found a lot of heart-pumping action. Most of the scary elements of this game were unfortunately limited to jump scares and, oh, I wonder what's behind that wall, bam, there it is. Sadly, because I'm partially hard of hearing, the jump scares don't really work on me because I think the scary factor of a lot of jump scares is just the sound that goes with it, and those always go over my head, pun intended. Overall, though, it wasn't a bad experience for a Resident Evil game for me, and I actually found myself enjoying it a bit. I wouldn't consider this an essential game for anyone to play, and I would rank it more towards average than I would exceptional. Ghost of Tsushima was actually released natively on the PlayStation 4, and it got a port the following year on PlayStation 5. This is another game of 2020 that I saw hyped to no end. I saw a lot of people being excited about this on online forums, other YouTube videos, and I mean, it was just off the charts. And the whole time I was seeing that hype, I kept thinking that I was missing something because the game, to me, in the previews, looked unremarkable. At least to me. So as I was in no hurry to grab this game at launch, I decided to wait until it was released on the PlayStation 5 to give it a playthrough. But I went into this game with no expectation that it was going to be any good. And this is one of the many times I was very happy to be proven wrong. Ghost of Tsushima is an action-adventure game played from a third-person perspective. The game has a large open world with no visible waypoints on the HUD, and can be explored without any guidance at the player's discretion. You can explore and travel to different parts of the island on horseback, and you can engage in direct confrontation with game enemies called a standoff using your katana, or you can use your trusty bow and arrow, or alternatively, you can stealthily avoid enemies altogether. Throughout your adventure, you can unlock various sets of armor, clothing, and charms, each having different properties that provide benefits in combat, and all of this takes place in medieval Japan, on the island of Tsushima, as you work in a clan that is dedicated to push back the Mongol invasion. As you may have heard me say many times on this channel, I really do like games that take place in historical period accurate places and settings. And that is what initially drew me into this game, but the overall game's story and the tight controls in this game really kept me going all the way through. It was very hard to put down once I started in this game. I think this is another example of how the Sony first-party titles coming up to the PlayStation 5's launch were really on point. This game is very well done. Its visuals and art direction are some of the most stunning I have seen in any game in recent memory. Add that up with the story and gameplay controls, and it became a very addictive experience. After playing through several hours of this game, I can definitely tell you it deserves all the critical praise that it has received, and I would definitely recommend this as a pickup on your PlayStation 5 if you haven't played it yet. But again, if you don't have a PS5 yet, you can still pick it up on the PlayStation 4 as well.
Repay his kindness.
By repeating the same mistakes that got your friends killed.
That's what the Mongols will think. But this time, I'll strike first.
When I first saw that they were making a new Hot Wheels game at E3 2021, I was definitely interested in trying this game out. This is another game series that I was introduced to on the PlayStation 1, and I had a lot of fun playing multiplayer with Hot Wheels Turbo Racing back on the original PlayStation. The games since that title have been kind of hit and miss for me, but I think this one puts the series in more of a positive direction for me. Rather than playing on fictional tracks in wild environments, you're actually playing on tracks that look like you could have designed them yourself, using real Hot Wheels tracks in your own house. In that respect, it kind of reminds me of the game Revolt, where you play as RC cars in miniaturized tracks and neighborhoods. This is one of those games where I really think if they're using ray tracing on the cars, it seems a bit wasteful to be on a game like this, as it's not meant to be a real-world simulation game. But the visuals in this game really do stand out as something top-notch, considering this game's subject matter. In terms of gameplay, they definitely stay away from a simulation type in favor of more arcade-style racing, and I think that fits Hot Wheels a bit better than simulation. There are certain few aspects of this game that I do find frustrating, but you can overcome with time and patience. But overall, where I think this game really shines is in the multiplayer. Definitely worth a pickup if you're looking for arcade racing games on your PlayStation 5, but if you don't have one yet, it is available on almost every other system out at the time as well. If you want a racing game that's more simulation-based and you like motocross-style games, I would recommend Ride 4. The visuals in this game really do seem to take advantage of that next-gen hardware by providing almost photorealistic environments. As this is more geared towards simulation racing, I don't think it's going to appeal to as wide of an audience as Hot Wheels will. And as I'm usually a fan of arcade racers more than that, I haven't really dumped a lot of hours into this game. Overall, I would give this game more of a score of average, like a 7 or 8 out of 10. Definitely competent, looks great, but the learning curve to get into this game is kind of steep. Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX is a complete faithful remake of the original Alex Kidd in Miracle World that debuted on the Sega Master System back in 1986. The reason why I give you that background is because if you do play this game, keep in mind, you are playing a game that was designed in 1986, and there may be a reason why they don't make games like they used to. Personally, I really did enjoy this game, and I think longtime fans of Alex Kidd will really enjoy the fact that they kept the original platforming intact. But newcomers to this game may be put off by the tight level of difficulty in learning how to control Alex Kidd. In terms of a remaster of the original game, this game is faithful to the source material to a fault. Where I personally would have liked to seen an improvement in how Alex controls in the game, specifically in how floaty he is and where he doesn't really stop on a dime, he just kind of floats forward and backwards, leading to a lot of unnecessary deaths. I do appreciate how you're able to restart the game every 3 lives from the level you left off in, whereas in the original, every time you powered off the game, you had to start over from the very beginning. I've seen review scores of this game be very, very low, and I think a lot of criticism comes to the fact that this gameplay and design of this game is very dated. I wouldn't go so far as to give this a 4 out of 10, but I'd give it around a 6 or a 7 out of 10. It's not a bad way to go back and experience what Sega's first flagship mascot was like, especially if you missed out on it like I did back in the day. However, if you already have a copy of Alex Kidd in Miracle World for the Master System, really there's no reason to buy this one except for the convenience of being able to play it on a modern display and not on over 35-year-old hardware. There are also, of course, games that I got because I am a member of PlayStation Plus. And monthly, since I've had the PlayStation 5, I've been able to take advantage of redeeming some free titles for the PlayStation 5. However, unlike the offerings on Game Pass, I think the selection here is a bit lacking. Overcooked All You Can Eat is a compilation of the original Overcooked and Overcooked 2 games, where the original got a remaster using Overcooked 2's engine, and online multiplayer was enabled, which is how you're probably going to want to play this game. In this game, players control a number of chefs in kitchens filled with various obstacles and hazards to rapidly prepare meals to specific orders under a time limit. It's one of those simple puzzle games that become very addictive once you master how to play it. Out of the PlayStation Plus PS5 offerings since I've had my PS5, this game has been my favorite that has been included. It's another casual game that you can just jump into whenever you want and play through a couple of levels, and I think the online multiplayer is definitely where this game shines, as playing through it single player is almost like playing it with one hand tied behind your back. Another of the PlayStation Plus digital offerings that I found tolerable was Wreckfest. The different types of gameplay mainly revolve around racing and demolition derby. The racing gameplay follows the same rules as most other modern racing games, such as Need for Speed or Gran Turismo, but the twist is that the races themselves will focus heavily on vehicular combat, where players have to find a balance between defensive tactics, such as avoiding or blocking opponents, and more aggressive tactics, such as ramming opponents into barriers to put them out of the race and earn points. Overall, this is another game that I can just pop in and out of and have a few hours of fun with, but nothing that I would go through and play for hours on end. If you look at all the titles that have been offered for PlayStation 5 users since I got my PS5, I seem to notice a trend that all of these games are heavily focused on online multiplayer. Overall, despite the fact that I've had to go out and collect each title individually on the PlayStation 5, I have had a lot of fun with this system, and there are a lot of console exclusives that are hard to ignore when comparing this system to the others that are out there. But I think the biggest problem with the PlayStation 5 is just getting access to one. But that said, that has been my experience with the PlayStation 5 this year. Again, let me know in the comments which ones you have also played, and which ones I have yet to cover that you think I should grab for my PlayStation 5. In the meantime, that will wrap it up for this video, and I will see you all in the next one. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A special thanks to those Patreons you see on screen. Also, if you like what you see, please remember to leave a like and click that subscribe button on your way out. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.